Hello and welcome to HITC Sport, and Happy New Year everyone. Thank goodness 2020 is over. It was an absolute shambles all year round. It was almost as bad as Alexis Sanchez's move to Man United 2 years ago. No one did well out of it, and it ended up costing everyone involved millions and millions of pounds. Anyway, while we can hopefully look forward to better times ahead, I do want to briefly cast our minds back to 1 year ago and look back at last year's January transfer business. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, so what I'm going to do is rate every Premier League club's January signings from 2020 and give them a rating 1 year on. Did they live up to the initial hype, or did the deal go about as badly as Ed Woodward trying to secure Jadon Sancho's signature last summer? Arsenal 2 out of 10. Last January was the first time Mikel Arteta got to sign some players for Arsenal, and we should have realised that then he wasn't up to the task. He brought in 2 loan players who've since become permanent, and I've literally got no idea why. The first was Pablo Mari, the Spanish defender who'd been playing in Brazil, and the second was Cedric Soares, the right back who'd been cast aside by Southampton. These were the first 2 signings of the Arteta era, and the warning signs were there already. No longer were Arsenal a giant club, they were just happy to settle for mediocrity. 12 months on and Mari's only just returned from injury, while Cedric spends his days playing in the Europa, unable to get in the Premier League team ahead of Hector Bellerin, which is hardly a ringing endorsement. At the time I gave Arsenal signings a 5 out of 10, and it's clear now that I was being way too generous. In hindsight, I'm not really sure why I even gave them that. Of course these deals were destined to fail. Aston Villa 1 out of 10. Christ, I thought Arsenal's January transfers were bad. Compared to Villa, they look like genius recruitment. Only one signing at Villa can hold his head up high, and that's Louis Barry, simply because the youngster hasn't played yet. But other than that, it's been an absolute shambles. And Buona Samata showed early promise but only managed a single goal, and he's already left. Believe that's better than Borja Baston, who only managed to get his arse off the bench twice. Pepe Reina was probably the best signing, but even he wasn't great. But no matter what, no signing was worse than Danny Drinkwater. When your time at a club is only remembered for headbutting your teammate in training, you know it's been a rough few months. Brighton 8 out of 10. Finally we've got some successful signings, kind of. Aaron Moyes' loan deal at the Amex became permanent and he did alright, although he's actually already left the club and is now playing in the Chinese Super League for Shanghai SIPG alongside Oscar and Marko Arnautovic. The weird thing is, he left Brighton for a smaller fee than he joined them for, and that's because he had a release clause in his contract exclusively for Chinese clubs. Aaron, if you were that desperate for the Chinese money, just say. But while Moy left, the other January signing has thrived. Tariq Lamptey made his Chelsea debut about a year ago and he looked really lively, so when Brighton snapped him up, it looked like an inspired signing. After a long bedding in period, Lamptey has exploded onto the scene this year and has to go down as one of the surprise stars of the season so far. Burnley 6 out of 10. Thank goodness Burnley did some business last January, as it meant their squad wasn't as decimated when football resumed over the summer. They brought in a youth player Henry Ogunbi who hasn't broke through yet, but the main signing was Josh Brownhill from Bristol City. He was a very Burnley signing, and he's proved to be a very Burnley player. He's slotted in well, fits the system, is willing to work hard without the ball. He's hardly exceptional, but he's an average kind of Premier League player who would probably be getting a lot more credit with Burnley not getting battered most weeks, although they have improved, to be fair to them. Chelsea, no grade. While Chelsea went mad in the transfer window over the summer, last January they were still in the midst of a transfer ban, meaning there were no signs for me to grade, so I guess I'll just have to move on. Crystal Palace 3 out of 10. In another world, signing Cenk Tosun could have been great for Palace. They were struggling for goals while Cenk Tosun was struggling for minutes. Their pair seemed like a match possibly made in some kind of twisted heaven where average teams needed out of form strikers. The early signs were good, with Tosun opening his account against Man City. But then the Turkish forward suffered an anterior cruciate ligament injury in training and off back to Everton he went. It's hard to downgrade this one too much. It's not like he was playing badly, the bloke physically couldn't, and unless he was going to trot out at Selhurst Park on crutches, that might not have been a bad idea actually compared to some of the rotten strikers Palace have had in recent years. Everton 6 out of 10. We spoke about him last month when I looked at Carlo Ancelotti's first Everton signing, and nothing's changed since then, so Gareth Branthwaite's arrival at Goodison still gets a 6 out of 10. The teenage defender was Everton's only arrival in Ancelotti's first transfer window, but he made up for it in the summer when he just signed a totally new midfield. Fulham 5 out of 10. A year ago Fulham were a championship club, and in January they were both busy and extremely quiet. They spent a fair bit of money, but 2 of the signs were just making Ivan Cavallero and Bobby Reed's loan deals permanent. Elsewhere they brought in Michael Hector from Chelsea, which makes it a hat-trick of players who can get the job done in the championship, but are nowhere near the standard in the Premier League. Although Bobby Reed has scored a fair few goals. Ah well, at least they'll be useful next season if they go down. Leeds United 5 out of 10. Just like Fulham, Leeds were also a Championship club 12 months ago, but the January transfer window was a tale of two halves. They would snap up Ivan Pervada on a free from Man City, and the young winners looked an exciting talent every time he's played, even impressing against his former club. Then you've got Jean-Kevin Augustin, a promising French striker who arrived on loan from Leipzig and looked like he could succeed where Patrick Bamford had been failing. 1 year on and Bamford is something of a goal machine in the Premier League, while Augustin is at none after a transfer dispute between Leipzig and Leeds, with Bielsa's side refusing to sign the striker despite a clause permitting Leeds to sign him if they won promotion. Considering they're so desperate not to sign him, it tells you all you need to know about his time at Ellen Road. But for reference, he didn't score once and managed just 3 appearances in total. Leicester City 3 out of 10. 1 year ago it looked like Leicester were heading for the Champions League, but in the end they had to settle for the Europa. Their only January signing was Ryan Bennett on loan from Wolves, but I don't think it was really his fault that the Foxes collapsed. Bennett barely played at the King Power, making just 5 appearances, and is now back down in the Championship with Swansea. While he barely played, he didn't make much of an impression, which is why the Leicester fans were celebrating when it was confirmed that they wouldn't be signing him permanently. Liverpool 4 out of 10. Christ, I got this one wrong a year ago. I think I got sucked into thinking, he's signing for Liverpool, therefore he must be good. In hindsight, Minamino hasn't been great for the Reds, and I kind of feel bad for him every time I watch him. Like I want him to do well, then he dribbles a shot straight at the keeper with about as much power as a right hook from Will Mackenzie. More often than not he gets hooked at half time when he does play, and I think he'll end up going down as a rare miss when it comes to Klopp and Liverpool signings. Man City no grade. Just like Chelsea, Man City didn't do any transfer business last January, but for completely different reasons. I mean, the title race was already over. All City had to play for was the Champions League, and they weren't going to win that. The title race was already over. It was like going up against Lewis Hamilton in a bashed up Ford Fiesta. There was nothing City could do to wrestle the title back, and they were happy to wait until the summer to rebuild. I'm surprised City didn't just have more fun at the back end of last season. Let Ederson play midfield, give Kyle Walker another shot in goal, Pep take a shot of vodka after every Kevin De Bruyne assist, anything just to make things a bit more exciting. Man United 9 out of 10. Man United made 2 big signings last January, and one of them was so good that it effectively negates the other. If Man United hadn't signed Odion Ighalo, I'd have given them a 10, but with a Nigerian more often than not stinking out the joint, I've got to drop it down to a 9. Ighalo joining the club last year was mad, and it still is when you think about it. He didn't prove the people wrong either, it's just resigned to the history books as another batshit crazy Man United signing since Fergie left. But the reason Man United get a 9 is Bruno Fernandes. As soon as he arrived, he transformed the club. Sure, they've still got problems, but Bruno Fernandes has been exceptional, and over the last 12 months has proven himself to be one of the best players in the division. While Twitter wants to bash him every 2 minutes for being something of a penalty merchant, I dread to think where Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side would be without Fernandes. Actually, I can probably have a good guess. Ole would be down the job centre, while Man United will be continuing to fail to find a place for Paul Pogba. Newcastle United 2 out of 10. At the time, Newcastle's January signings looked excellent. Considering none of them were brought back permanently, it pretty much sums up how things went. Nabil Bentaleb was persistent, in the sense that he persistently tried to pass the ball to literally anyone who wasn't in a black and white shirt. As for Danny Rose, it looked more like he was on a holiday, looking a shadow of the man who was once a World Cup semi-finalist and Champions League runner-up. The best player of the lot was Valentino Lazaro, and he was the one who played the least. He's got himself into the Champions League now though, but whatever, Steve Bruce knows best. Sheffield United 6 out of 10. What a difference a year makes. 12 months ago and it looked like Sheffield United were heading for Europe. Now it looks like they're heading for the Championship. They brought the transfer out to sign Sander Berge, and I was buzzing at the time, going on as if they'd signed the second coming of Christ, but with how things are now going, Berge clearly isn't the Messiah. He's having a rough patch in red and white, which can be said about most of Chris Wilder's players, while the other 2020 signing Jack Robinson hasn't really filled the void left by the injured Jack O'Connell. As for the loan signings they made, the less said about them the better. Southampton 8 out of 10. The Saints were pretty quiet last January, with their only real important arrival being Kyle Walker-Peters on loan from Spurs. And considering they made the deal permanent over the summer, it's clear to see that things went pretty well. KWP has been an excellent addition to Ralph Hasenhüttl's side, an athletic player who can do both sides of the game, as the club of the Alps continues to get fairly average players playing his exhilarating brand of football thanks to his coaching. Tottenham 6 out of 10. Last January was the first time we got to see Jose Mourinho in action in the transfer market at Spurs, and it's fair to say he had a mixed time. They made Giovanni Lo Celso's loan permanent, which had been expected, although he's a player who's underwhelmed me to be honest, mainly because I had such high expectations. He's done okay, but not the Eriksen figure I thought he'd be. Jedson Fernandez, his loan's been an absolute waste of time, and you wonder if Daniel Levy was just winding Benfica up when he agreed to pay more than 50 million quid for him if they decided to keep him. Of course they were never going to keep him. The one shining light's been Steven Bergwijn, but even after some key goals, he's a player who's struggled with injuries and hasn't really nailed down his place in Mourinho's starting 11. West Brom 5 out of 10. Looking back, West Brom's January 2020 signings were mixed. Callum Robinson came in on loan from Sheffield United and got himself a few goals, but not too many. But it was enough to get himself a permanent move there, whereas it actually looked a lot better back in the Premier League. But still, he's hardly setting the world alight. I'm basing a lot of this back when they played Chelsea. As for Kamil Grosicki, he probably wished he never joined the club. His creativity was brought in to help West Brom get over the line in the promotion charge, but come the end of the summer they wanted rid. However, a move to Nottingham Forest collapsed due to time running out, and since then he's been left in the wilderness. Ah well, at least they both helped Slaven Bilic's side get promoted, I guess. West Ham 9 out of 10. Alongside Man United, West Ham had the best January 2020 when you look back. They made 3 signings and they've all played their part. Darren Randolph's been a much more reliable backup for Lucas Fabianski, but the stars of the show have been Jared Bowen and Thomas Souček. The former Hull lad has stepped up at the Premier League with ease and he's actually been one of the unsung heroes of the season. But Thomas Souček, man, the bloke is literally the new Marouane Fellaini. It's no wonder David Moyes loves him. He'd probably try to get him to grow an afro and start throwing some more elbows. Wolves 8.5 out of 10. Wolves brought in a few young faces last January, but the main arrival was Daniel Podence. Initially he wasn't getting a lot of football, watching on as Jota, Adama and Neto stole the show. But since Jota left, Podence has been out of this world. His speed and possession is incredible, then just like that he can slam on the brakes, turn in the ball and go the other way. It's a bit like he's a robot. Maybe someone should investigate that. Wolves also added Alfie from HIT7s too, and I'm sure he'll be good in the future when he packs in this YouTube lark. So there we have it, that's every Premier League club's January signings rated 1 year on. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. As always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to HITC Sport. Happy New Year, but until next time we will see you around.